This is the story of a man who crawled out of the Syrian desert to become one of the most powerful titans of industry in Europe. He was born into a destiny of sand and silence, forbidden to even learn how to read. The odds didn't just say he would fail, the odds said he shouldn't even exist. If you want to understand the miracle of Mohed Altrad's life, you have to go back to an unmarked point in the Syrian desert, sometime around 1948 or 1951. Nobody knows for sure. Birth certificates didn't exist among the nomadic Bedouin tribes. His start wasn't just rough, it was tragic. His mother, ill and abused by his father, died when Mohed was just an infant. His father, a powerful tribal leader, wanted nothing to do with the weak child. He disowned him instantly. So Mohed was left to his grandmother. Their world was primal. It was tents, camels, the scorching sun, and the endless horizon. Survival was the only goal. His grandmother loved him, but she had a very specific plan for his life. He was to be a shepherd. That was the Bedouin way. Education? Education was unnecessary. In fact, his grandmother actively forbade it. She believed school would make him soft, lazy, and unfit for the hard life of the desert. But there was a spark in Mohed that the desert couldn't extinguish. There was a small shack nearby that served as the local schoolhouse. Every day while he was supposed to be tending the flock, young Mohed would sneak away. He would creep up to the back of the shack. There was a small hole in the mud wall. Picture this, a tiny, dusty Bedouin boy pressing his eye to a crack in the wall, desperately trying to hear the teacher inside, trying to decipher these strange squiggles called an alphabet. Day after day he did this, watching, listening, absorbing. Eventually the teacher caught him, but instead of chasing him away, he saw the intensity in the boy's eyes. He invited him inside. Mohed had no paper, no pencils. He learned by tracing letters in the dirt with a stick. It turned out the forgotten shepherd boy was brilliant. He absorbed knowledge like the dry earth absorbs rain. He didn't just catch up, he surpassed everyone. Against his tribe's wishes, against his father's rejection, he finished his basic schooling. And then the impossible happened. He scored so highly on his exams that the Syrian government offered him a scholarship to study abroad. He had a choice, pilot training in Kiev or university in France. He chose France. In 1970, Mohed Altrad arrived in Montpellier, France. It sounds like a fairy tale victory, doesn't it? It wasn't. Imagine stepping off a plane. You are perhaps 20 years old. You have no family. You have no safety net. You have the equivalent of maybe $50 in your pocket. And crucially, you do not speak a single word of French. The transition was brutal. The desert heat was replaced by a damp European cold he had never experienced. He was isolated by language and culture. He was looking at a mountain that seemed impossible to climb. This is where the hustle truly began. It wasn't about building a business yet. It was about staying alive. He enrolled in university to learn the language before he could even begin his real studies. The scholarship money was barely enough to cover rent in a tiny, dilapidated room. For years, Mohed Altrad knew the gnawing ache of genuine hunger. To make his money stretch, he adopted a strict regimen. He ate only one real meal a day. He later recalled that sometimes the hunger was so intense he couldn't focus on the words in his textbooks. But the alternative, going back to the desert as a failure, was worse than the hunger. He threw himself into his studies with the same ferocity he used to spy through that hole in the wall. He mastered French. He earned degrees in physics and math. And finally, he secured a PhD in computer science. The shepherd boy was now Dr. Mohed Altrad. With a PhD in hand, Mohed entered the French corporate world. He worked for major players like Alcatel and Thomson. He was doing well. He had a salary, a car, security, everything the desert couldn't provide. But something was wrong. He realized that no matter how brilliant he was, no matter how hard he worked, in the rigid, traditional corporate structure of 1980s France, he would always be an outsider. He was the Bedouin with the strange accent. He hit a glass ceiling. He knew he would never be allowed to run the company. He hadn't come this far, survived this much, to be told, know your place. In 1985, at nearly 40 years old, he made a radical decision. He quit his comfortable job. He decided that if no one would give him a seat at the head table, he would build his own table. He took his entire life savings, everything he had scraped together from years of corporate work, and went looking for a business to buy. He found a scaffolding company in his adopted hometown of Montpellier. It was not a glamorous tech startup. It was blue-collar, gritty, and unsexy. It involved heavy metal tubes, construction sites, and tough labor. It was also a disaster. The company was bankrupt. It was bleeding money, losing hundreds of thousands of francs a year. The banks were ready to foreclose. Everyone told Mohed he was insane. Why throw your savings into a sinking ship? You're a computer scientist. What do you know about scaffolding? Mohed looked at the company differently. He looked at it with the eyes of someone who knew what it was like to have nothing. He saw good workers who were badly managed. He saw a fundamental need. Buildings always need scaffolding. He bought the company for practically nothing, taking on its massive debts. This is where the philosopher king of industry emerged. Mohed didn't run the company from an ivory tower. He went to the construction sites. He spoke to the men putting up the metal bars. He realized the previous management treated the workers like interchangeable parts. Mohed treated them like human beings. He listened to their ideas on how to stock scaffolding faster and safer. He implemented systems based on respect and efficiency. He cut waste, not wages. Within 1 year, the bankrupt company was turning a profit. But Mohed wasn't satisfied with just saving one company. He had a vision of scale that perhaps only someone born under the vast desert sky could imagine. He began a strategy of acquisition.
He used the profits from the first company to buy a competitor that was also struggling. He fixed it, then he bought another, and another. He became known for buying distressed industrial companies across Europe, mixers, wheelbarrows, construction equipment, and turning them around using his unique blend of rigid financial discipline and deep human empathy. He wasn't a ruthless corporate raider. He was a corporate healer. Over 30 years, that single bankrupt scaffolding firm in Montpellier grew into the Altrad Group. Today, it is a global giant. It employs tens of thousands of people in over 100 countries. His equipment underpins construction projects, oil refineries, and nuclear power plants around the world. The boy who was forbidden to read is now a billionaire, a published novelist, and was named the World Entrepreneur of the Year. He received the French Legion of Honor, the highest order of merit in France. When you look at the story of Mohed Altrad, you don't just see a business success story. You see a testament to the sheer indestructibility of the human spirit. He proved that your starting point does not determine your destination. He proved that hunger, both literal and metaphorical, can be the greatest fuel on earth. He once said, "If you can't be happy, at least you must be strong." From peeking through a hole in a mud wall to sitting atop a global empire, Mohed Altrad didn't just hustle, he endured. And in enduring, he built a world far greater than the one he was born into. Thanks for watching. If you want more stories about the people who built our world, hit that subscribe button. See you in the next one.